All right, well, what's happening, YouTube community? How's your day going? Are you ready for the weekend? Listen, the last time I was here, I spoke to you about the fact that I spend a lot of time helping loved ones in state and out of state with their health care, with their medical care. I attend a lot of appointments, talk to a lot of doctors, talk to a lot of facilities. I'm engaged, I'm involved. And so, what I want to do is just give you kind of a survival guide to getting started if you find yourself in this position. When I first started helping out, some 10, 15 years ago, I really didn't know what I was doing and I was really lost. It's a lot of overwhelming information sometimes. And so I've got a couple of things that I'm going to share with you today, really quick, to help get you started and kind of some rules of the road, so to speak. But there might be others who are looking at this video and, maybe you're involved in the healthcare industry and you want to chime in, that'd be great. Right now, healthcare is pretty fragile, especially for our seniors. So, if you're looking after loved ones, then hopefully this will be helpful to you. So, first thing I would suggest is that you always have something to write with and keep a notebook. And I'm not talking about a three-ring binder that you always have to supply with paper. I'm talking about a notebook, something like this. Okay, I have one of these for each one of my relatives that I look after. Documentation is so critical and key. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to recall every conversation, every medication, every doctor visit. Write it down. Second thing is this: learn the language. Depending on the level of care, depending on the situation, you're going to be talking to people who are a lot smarter than you are. They're going to use different terms that you've never heard of. Get acclimated to it, understand it, especially when you're speaking to business office, social workers. In fact, I've recently found a resource, glossary of terms that are helpful to know. So I've been reading it every day. I'm going to pin it into the comments, and hopefully you'll be able to find that useful. But the main thing is understanding terms, especially those that have to do with any type of authority, power of attorney, surrogacy. Understand those, make those a priority because as you start working through medical plans, discharge plans, it's helpful to know and be able to understand, not only so that you can converse with the people, the caregivers, but also if your loved one is not in a position where they completely understand everything right off the bat, you want to be able to articulate it, kind of boil it down and make it really simple. The third thing I would say along those lines is communicate often. Communicate often with the staff, communicate often with nurses, with therapists, and if you can, be present. It means so much. And I'll tell you something, depending on just the nature of the injury, the nature of the medical issue, if your loved one's been bedridden, they haven't been communicating, they're just, getting back into it, it's so helpful to see a familiar face by the bedside. Okay, it just makes things so much easier for them and puts them at ease knowing that you're there. So do that. And as you communicate, one thing that I found, I heard somebody say this actually, they're like, hey, how's such and such doing? Sorry about that. Hey, how's such and such doing? How do you think they're feeling? I heard this, taking place in another room. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. They're feeling fine, but what's written in the chart? And that's key because you don't want any information based on assumptions. You don't want information based on perception. You want things based on fact. And facts for doctors, facts for nurses, facts for insurance companies is what's written in the chart, what's written in the healthcare plan. So it's great to know, hey, your aunt was smiling this morning and, she looked great. But it's also important that what's written in that chart aligns with the care, and you just need to have that. So I strongly advise that. And along with that, review those doctor's notes. You have access to the notes, especially if you're doing outpatient visits. Always make sure those notes align with what actually occurred, what the purpose of the visit was. Because I tell you, I ran into a situation just recently, got the notes from a recent doctor visit that I attended for a loved one, and they were completely out of whack. Come to find out, the notes were written on a template, and no one bothered to review that template. They just stamped it, go and sent it to me. But and sending it to me, guess who else was in the top line? The insurance company. So I had to jump on that fairly quickly and set the record straight, get the doctor's office to set the record straight. And that's so important for you to know, especially if you're dealing with Medicare, Medicaid. The rules vary from state to state. Okay. Changes vary from state to state. Uh, Approvals, authorizations, state to state, they're different. So get to know that. And then, last but not least, your conversations, especially when you're talking to the social workers, I would strongly advise you to keep in mind that they are people who are working off of a mandate. And in fact, especially when you start dealing with rehab facilities, those folks are trying to get your loved one back um, to the level of independence or the same level that they were before they ended up with the medical issue. They're not trying to exceed that. And a lot of that has to do with costs. I might not think it's right, but if you ask anyone, and if you're a social worker, healthcare provider, tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, but what they're trying to do is they're trying, if your loved one was walking, they just want to get them walking. If they were walking with a limp, then they're going to walk with a limp. They're not going to be ready to run the stairs and leap tall buildings. It's just the fact of the matter. It's the way it's constructed. So the most important thing though is to make sure that you keep the conversation civil, be present, use their names, learn everyone's role and responsibility, because there are a lot of collaborators, a lot of moving parts in the care of your loved one. And quite frankly, not all of them get a chance to communicate. Not all of them see her. A lot of them are basing decisions based on what they read in a note, based on what they read in a chart. Okay, so it's important that you stay on top of that and just understand that, you might have a conversation in which you feel like, they really don't care. They care, but, understand your environment too. For every person who goes home, goes to rehab, goes to convalescent center, a lot of people don't. And that's really tough. And, for you healthcare providers, I got to tell you, I tip my hat to you, because, I've changed diapers. Okay. I've cleaned bedpans. I've done some of that heavy lifting, and it's very humbling. I don't think any of you are in it for the money. I think you're really in it because you want to help your fellow man. And so it's a noble profession, and they need your support just like you need theirs. All right. So don't mean to get on the soapbox, but I'm just sharing it with you because you need to know you're not alone. So keep lifting as you climb. Have a pleasant weekend. Hope this was helpful. Take care.